Contractors.
Oh, yeah.
It's
I fortunately don't have to deal with that.
yeah, so we had uh water in our kids' bathroom. The faucet basically broke, and
Okay.
essentially it started spewing water everywhere. So all the way from the top of our main floor to our
Yeah.
I mean the top floor to the main floor all the way to our garage.
Wow.
So it
What can you even do about that? You gotta
well
like
we
dry
had
it
to
off.
yeah, so we had to bring in a water remediation team to pull back some of the carpet, put blowers to dry it all up. That's why the bathroom is getting demoed because under the tile got wet.
Yeah.
So all the tile has to come up. They were able to dry everything else, but
That sounds expensive. And
yeah, right?
yeah, that sounds expensive.
I'm not am I lagging on your end? I feel like I'm lagging on my end, but that could just be me.
There might be in the stream because I think what's happening is we're both using high definition streaming, so it's probably just not processing it quite as fast as real time.
Okay.
But I mean, to you got the whole setup. No one else has shown up ready to go like this.
Well, you can't be a creative director without having some of the perks of being a creative director. So
I was gonna say you have the Sony A7. You got like a staff. I'm like I'm lacking. I need to get an assistant or something.
this is
So
years
yeah,
in the
yeah.
making.
So just to kind of tell you what this is the Art Worker podcast is where I talk to people uh, who are kind of at the intersection of art and work, where their career is based on something in the creative field, and we're trying to give the people who watch this a sense of how to break into creative design or how to break into graphic design as a career and kind of where their journey takes them. So I wanted to start because I've known you for a while. It's how long has it been? Like 10 years?
Yeah, it's been a while.
But yeah, but neither of us were like, I think I had just started my business when I met you, and you were
I was
dealing
working
with,
at Big Frog.
oh my God. So yeah, I remember. Do you remember, have you talked to Claude in the last few years or anything?
I haven't talked to him. I know that he obviously he doesn't own that Big Frog. Hadn't owned that
No.
Big Frog for a while. I think he went back to corporate.
Okay. Well, I remember him trying to trade. He wanted me to trade him printing for rent at one of his properties, and I was like, I don't know about that.
Wow.
It was like downhill from there.
Right.
but
I'm like, that seems like a little gray, gray
but
area.
tell us where you currently work. Tell us what you're doing right now.
So I am the creative director for Eagles Nest Church, and we're actually located in Roswell, Georgia. So we are a non-denominational church. That means basically we just don't have any like affiliation, like not like Baptist or Methodist. So we're a non-denominational church, definitely pretty modern. We have about 3,000 or so members. So yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And it's all in that one location in Roswell?
Yes, all in the one location. I've been trying to get a satellite in like Lawrenceville, but that's only really because of I live in Lawrenceville. But
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I was driving out I drive to Atlanta every day, and yesterday it took me 2 hours to get from Lawrenceville to Northside Drive.
right. I
There were
know
like
that's
6 accidents.
I try to schedule anytime I need to go to Roswell around traffic, so I don't go too early and I don't go too late because it takes a potentially as short as a 25 to 30-minute trip to an hour and 15-minute trip. So
Insane. I mean, that's like a whole trip in between the shortest time and the longest time.
right,
But yeah,
exactly.
no, I know what you mean. And at this point, it's like when I get to work, I'm just like, it can't get any worse. I've just been in traffic for half my life. So
Right. But that's where you at. So one thing I actually do is listen to podcasts, or I will listen to like an entire album that I wanted to listen to, or just catch up on a few podcasts that I missed. So it
what kind
that
of podcast do you listen to? Like true crime stuff or something else?
so no, it's a funny thing. I actually listen to a lot of like mom podcasts or leadership podcasts.
Yeah.
And I just like to hear other people's stories. So that helps me create stories just to listen to other people's stories. So I find great value in just listening to other people.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then I've noticed, like going back, your personal progression has been kind of amazing. I like I, it when I met you. Tell us what you're doing when I met you to
So
kind of give it some context.
yeah, so when we met, I was working as a, I guess you could call it a graphic designer in a t-shirt printing shop called Big Frog, which is just like a franchise. And we
Yeah.
just made shirts for people and printed them. That was the extent of my job. I think I might have been pregnant with my first kid or about
No, it was.
to.
I think I met you before you got
Oh,
pregnant. So
before I got pregnant. Oh, see, that's how long.
yeah,
Wow, it's been so long.
it has. And what's interesting about Big Frog is their sales pitches. You can come in with any size order, and they'll turn it around. So you can kind of imagine what the demands on on a graphic designer in that setting is.
Yeah, it was a very stressful. I That is actually where I learned how to balance um my art as a graphic designer and the job, because sometimes jobs don't require um the full art that you have as a graphic designer, because sometimes you put so much time and passion and work into something that people don't really necessarily value or require, and so you have to learn how to balance those things in order not to burn yourself out, in order but still provide um, the best product for that person. Everybody
Yeah.
doesn't need, you to spend 25 hours on a design, because they don't value that. They just need something quick, turn around, and moving on to the next thing. So that's where I actually really learned how to hone my skills and basically start to categorize, okay, who, what does this person really need? This is how much time I can allow to it. I had to become more efficient as a designer, actually working at Big Five.
And what's interesting is like you were dealing with customers face to face a lot of the time. Like they'd consult with you in front of them, and you'd be like on Photoshop or Illustrator trying to put something together for them.
Right.
So like, did you learn any tricks or like shortcuts of what people like?
Yeah, so people sometimes don't really know exactly what they want. So, um, so you have to, in a sense, help guide them the to the solution. So everything, as a creative, I like to see everything, every problem, um, as a solution that can be solved through creativity. And so helping people arrive. Hey, I want this. I don't know how to get from A to B. And so my job as a creator is to help you get from A to B very quickly. A lot of it is typically, and people are very similar. While we are very unique, we are also very similar. So a lot of times people will have some of the same requests, just different nuances. So we have kind of fonts, that typically people like. How do you like this? It's a birthday party, so you're more this type of font, or if it's a funeral, we're going more this type of font, right? So
Yeah.
just having those ready, easily being able to mask out or take things out of photos, which is a huge request, or recreating someone's logo. That was always a huge request. So, just some things that we had to be really, really good at really, really fast. So,
How does that experience compare to what you're doing now at Eagle's Nest? Because it seems like a totally different vibe.
so what I do for Eagles Nest is, gosh, it is all encompassing. So, as a creative director, now, a creative director can mean so many different things for so many different businesses, so many different churches. So, for us at Eagles Nest, the creative director is in charge of basically social media. So, I'm over social media, I'm over our website. We have an app as well. I'm over the brand obviously is what you see, as far as, anything we put out. So that includes like graphics and things like that. I'm also over what we call just like the creative experience. So I'm also helping departments within our church provide the best experience. And I'm using creativity to solve some of their issues, right? And so now I don't do this all by myself. I have a team of people that work under me, people who run the website, but I'm just over it. People who help run the service, but I'm just over it. And I just have the overarching vision. But ultimately, that's kind of what I do. But people are very similar still, Um, there is one thing that Big Frog taught me was how to interface with a lot of different types of people. Um,
Mm.
Especially in church, you meet a lot of different types of people. You have people who are, shy, or people who have a huge personality, or people who are opinionated, or people who, say they don't have opinions, but they really do have opinions. And you have to learn how to work with a lot of different type of people. And the most interesting thing about working for a church is also, while we have a staff, and we have a very lean staff, but while we have a staff, a lot of our heavy lifting comes from volunteers. So these are people that
Mm.
don't get paid. So there is also a fine line with having a vision and then implementing it with people who also aren't there necessarily for money. So Big Frog
Yeah, how do
definitely
you
taught me a lot of that.
I was gonna say, like, a lot of what you do, like the creative component of it wouldn't exist if you weren't in communication with so many different people. And that was kind of the thing I always admired about working with you, is you had this kind of you have this ability to see it from the other person's shoes, or their other person's point of view. And I'm curious, like, how do you motivate? Like, first of all, you got to tell me a little bit more about the creative experience. I need you to describe that. And then also, how do you motivate people who are volunteers versus employees? Like, what are you using to get them to buy into the project?
So I'll answer that first. So the biggest buy-in that I found is actually storytelling. Everyone
Hmm.
wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Everyone, that's why, you know, bandwagoners are huge, and, following a sports team is huge, and religion is huge. Now, whether you're Christian or Muslim or whatever, everyone wants to feel like they're not out here on an island by themselves, and that we're all kind of working together in some sort of main big goal. Oh, most people, not everyone. And so what we found is actually being able to tell the stories of people's whose lives that we're changing, by doing what we do. So while you may not get a paycheck from, opening these doors for people, that creates a sense of welcoming as they're coming in, right? That
Yeah.
creates a sense of hospitality, when they're entering our doors. And so, as far as the creative experience, so that's how we kind of keep our volunteers motivated. And obviously, we give them cool swag like this, Eagle Nation sweatshirt.
Right.
We've done T-shirts. We feed them actually breakfast every Sunday. So that's also a
That's
perk
nice.
to coming in, to volunteering. But the creative experience is just what we.
Do you work in concert with the pastor of the church in terms of how you develop the messaging, how you communicate with people?
Yes, definitely. I have been working there now for a very long time. Well, not well, it feels very long to me. But I think when did I we started attending just at Eagles Nest, I think in 2018. And
Okay.
then I actually came on initially as the assistant kids director. So that's totally something. But the reason I did that was actually because I saw a problem and I wanted to solve it. And I'm always looking at everything through a creative lens of, oh, if there's a problem, it can be solved through some sort of creative idea, right?
Yeah.
And so then I transitioned from that. And that was just um a kind of a stipend role. Still had a full-time job as I was in digital marketing. And then they found out I was in marketing and they need a marketing director. So then I transitioned full time as the marketing director. And then during the pandemic, I became the creative director. So long
Wow.
journey, but but all so I've been there a while, so I do have a good pulse on um our sound and and our the vision of Eagles Nest Church. But I definitely work very close hand in hand with Pastor Lee and our leadership team to kind of curate some of the things that you hear. But they typically start with me as far as a communication and a verbiage. It typically starts with me, and then we run everything by everyone, make sure it feels good. So yeah.
Did you kind of have this goal in mind when you were younger that you wanted to be in the creative field, or what were you? Is this totally random for you?
So surprisingly, I grew up in a household where my mom was a nurse and my dad was in accounting. So he was like a CPA. And they were very non-creative people, right? Great people, hardworking. I get, a lot of some of my characteristics from my parents. So there wasn't really a creative outlet per se, for me, in as far as like my parents pushing me, right? Because
Sure.
they were like, we were like, go to school, get a job, that's what you're gonna do, right? Well, I always had this little, I was different, right? But I still played sports and I still I really loved basketball. So I actually went to school, college, on a basketball scholarship. But there
Wow.
was always something creative in me. I was always the girl when PowerPoint was like a thing, I was making PowerPoints for everyone and I was XYZ. And so it was always in the back of my mind. I honestly wish I would have curated that passion earlier. But again, you don't know what you don't know. And so just going throughout life, I was always curious. So I was like, oh, well, let me try graphic design. I like this. I put things together pretty well. I understand color, fonts. Oh, this can go well here. People start to like it. So then I start more. And then I got into web design. Then I just started doing more and more and more. And so
So
I initially didn't think I was going to. I actually went to school. I got a communications degree. I thought I was going to be in the film industry because I loved film. I loved that. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe not the film industry because I really don't want to go to LA. So I thought, oh, maybe news, news anchor. I was like, oh, I kind of like that. I
I
really
could
have
see you as a news anchor.
I really have a terrible
Yeah.
memory. So it's like, unless there's a confidence monitor, I'm not gonna be good at that. So, but I knew I would land somewhere create in the creative field, and then I started heavily into graphic design. So I kind of ended graphic
So who were
design.
your influences then? Like if it wasn't coming from the house, what were you looking at? What was engaging you visually?
So well, I will say my influencers are still my parents. So the work ethic and the drive that they instilled in me was huge because actually, sometimes when you're creative, the one thing that a lot of us struggle with is time management and then just kind of just got to be in the flow and feel it. But that
Yeah.
is the total opposite when you grow up in a household of type A parents and everything is on a schedule and you do things. So I learned from an early age the importance of hard work and commitment and seeing things through. And that was huge. So I do consider like my parents major influences. In my life. And honestly, this is gonna sound so cheesy because I don't want to be one of those people, but church was super creative.
Hmm.
You could do,
Tell
and
me more
I
about
grew up in the church. So there were, from anything from songs to musicians to dancers to spoken word to, music videos. It was really creative. And
And
now, granted, it wasn't as creative as, what the world puts out, but I really wasn't. I was engulfed in the church because that's how we grew up as a family. We're always in church, and so a huge influence on my creativity, um, came from the church.
I was going to say, like, church is a safe space to learn what you like,
Right.
what you, your kind of creative pursuits. How does hmm, there's so many directions I can go in. I mean, the first thing let's go ahead and I got to go ahead and ask why the eagle? Because it is like I hear lion, lamb, uh, like I when I went to a Christian school, I had to learn all the names of Jesus. You know that poster where it's like
Right.
the app and stuff like that.
Right.
So, but I'm curious, why the pastor, why your church chose the eagle.
So actually, the eagle, Pastor Lee, tells the story a lot. Um, Essentially, he was in the investment business before he ever became a pastor. So he spent 35 plus years, don't quote me on the number, in the investment on Wall Street, handling major accounts, and walked away from it all. Almost lost everything, but walked away from it all, because he felt like God was calling him to start a church. And at the beach, we go actually as a staff, we go to Destin every year, and that's where God kind of spoke to him and said, I want you to start a church. And the eagle just represents, one like basically it's the best bird there is. They can see the farthest, the biggest fly soaring high. A lot of what our pastor brings from a from his business and investment background is ingrained, in our DNA as a church. And
Yeah.
so leadership and excellence and soaring high, these are things that kind of are synonymous with this eagle that you see. You don't ever see a eagle, you don't ever mix up a chicken and an eagle, right? And
Hopefully not.
and so, that is kind of where the eagle came from, and the nest came from because the nest is kind of the place where you get prepared or you grow, and whether that's growing in your faith or whether that's growing as a person individually, growing in your business. We believe that the church is a place where you can come and you can grow, and like eagles, you're not supposed to stay there. So you're supposed to go out and fly and do whatever God has called you to do. So that's kind of where it comes from.
I was going to say there is this kind of theme of having vision that I think also speaks to the non-denominational aspect of the church. Like I don't know, growing up in the South, uh, my experience with churches, it's either very structured, very orthodox, whether it's Baptist or Methodist, or you kind of when I've gone to non-denominational church, they're more open, and you see a lot more of people's. I don't want to say they're more authentic or something, but they're not going. They don't have this fear of not expressing themselves, and I always thought that was, so. But what's interesting about your church is that it's just, in my experience, it's been one of those things where you guys have never really proselytized to me, but I feel welcome in y'all's company, to say, like, for lack of a better term. And that's always been, it's always made me feel good. It feels like a safe space. And that was kind of something I wanted to get your opinion on. If how do you promote that safe space? How do you give people the ability to express themselves in a church setting?
I think, like one word that you brought up is just being authentic and real. Um, I think when people see, and like you, I grew up, I'm from the South, so I saw a lot of churches like that it was very guarded, or a show in a sense, right? And I
No.
think as people grow up, you realize, what is true and what's not true. And I think people are looking for people who are real, because people have real issues. People are hurting, whether they say it or not. And we want to be a place where if you feel comfortable enough, to laugh and joke, and you can also feel that same comfort to cry and hurt and be heard. And I think that's what people need. That's who Jesus was. And ultimately, we're trying to be like him. And I think you never saw Jesus, like people always say, oh, you saw Jesus with the sinners. Or I think he was around the people that were real. Like
Yeah.
they weren't trying to hide who they were. You see the Pharisees, a lot of them hiding behind the scriptures, or, they weren't trying to catch you doing something wrong, or, accusing you or judging you. And I think that people in the Bible that he was hanging around were real. Like this is who they were. And when you can get down to and break down those walls, that's when you really start to actually make that life change, is through just the realness.
Yeah, and I think the weird part about it is, that realness is often mistaken as being radical in some way. Like it's so unusual for the rest of the world to see someone being themselves.
Right. It's almost like, wait, are you being fake? No, I'm
Yeah,
being real.
yeah, yeah. And so, um, how has the last couple of years changed how you guys connect with people? Because COVID must have thrown everything off balance, and now people are starting to come back into the fold. It's starting to normalize. But what are you doing to kind of address all of these things that still exist from the last couple of years?
Ooh, let me tell you, COVID was that was interesting. We actually had to make such a big pivot. Um, Before COVID, so believe it or not, and we accredit all of this to, our team pulling together, making a pivot, figuring it out. But before COVID, we didn't even stream
Wow.
our services. We didn't
So
even
this,
own cameras. Right. So when the world had to shut down, we had to figure out, how are we going to connect with our family? How are we going to connect with the people that we see all the time, and still somewhat try to do what we did, right? And that was a huge challenge for us. We had to go out and get, all this gear and figure it out. But in that, actually, I still, my husband, he's actually the tech director, so he's in charge of all of that gear and making
oh,
sure it
cool.
all works and everything. That's how this setup was able to happen. But he, we talk about that a lot. Like some of our best services we felt were during the pandemic.
Yeah.
When we were able to, really talk about a lot of things that people were going through. It was a very difficult time to be away from people, when some of the biggest things that were happening, not only in our culture but just in our time in general, was happening. We had you know there was COVID. There was also just a lot of some the race stuff was still like, you know
It
all over
was
the
it was
place.
it was
It was a
insane.
it was a very difficult time. But we felt like, we offered a lot of things, resources. Obviously, outside of the service on Sunday, we opened up what we call life groups that happen hybridly. So, or life groups that happened on Zoom. So these are life groups are just groups that come together and they just meet and they just talk about life. Actually, my husband and I run a life group. So right now, our life group is a hybrid group. So how we're starting to make that shift a little bit back, but we understand we can't go totally back because we have people that watch us from out of state. Out of this country as well. And
Really.
so we offer a lot of things that are hybrid. While we're still meeting now in person, we have a vibrant online experience that you can watch on Sunday. You can also still take some of our classes, what we call E&U, Eagles Nest University. You can take that on Zoom. And so, like I said, our life group, we meet, once, we meet actually twice a month, once on Zoom and once in person. And so, where we're still trying to, slowly but surely come back together. But we still understand that some people still need a little bit, more time. And so we're just trying to what we consider ourselves like now a hybrid church. We're trying to make sure that we have a nice, balance of both worlds.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you guys weren't streaming before the
I know
pandemic. That's kind of
everyone
a big
says that.
thing. As you talk to me about this new, how we're kind of approaching new normal, what are some of the things you and the church are looking forward to in 2023?
So something that we're actually looking forward to is in gosh, last year, I guess it was last year, we actually had to move into a high school. So we're actually located at Centennial High School in Roswell.
Oh, cool.
And we had, as a church family, we've been looking for a new building. And we've been looking and looking and looking for this building for years. And last year on December 30th, we closed on our 15.5-acre property right across the street from Centennial. So there used to be
Hey,
like an old Coles building and
yeah,
some other outer parcels. So it's 15.5 acres. So we are looking forward to building out our new facility, and being more of a staple in the community. Once we have that up and ready to go, we are over the moon, one, to have clothes, but also just to be able to provide more help to the community of Roswell. And we're just looking forward to that in 2023.
that's that's great. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank
I'll have to
you.
come check it out when
Yes.
it's ready.
Yeah.
Um, what are some of the difficulties you deal with creatively on a day-to-day basis that, like, I guess what I'm getting at is what kind of wisdom would you impart on your younger self nowadays?
So this is a great question. um,
Okay.
I will. So, as far as difficulties, when you work at a church, there, um, there is always something to do. So there's always something creative to do, whether that's whether we're social media, redoing our website, creating content, capturing a Sunday morning service, um, creating events for the community. There's always something to do. And one thing that is a challenge, but one thing I would tell my younger self is to rest, and also understand that it's okay to be you, right? So I think before I, fully stepped into myself and accepted that I was creator and I was a little bit weird compared to other people, you just have to understand that that is what the world needs. Not everyone can do what I can do. And that's not in a like arrogant, pompous way, but I believe that if people understood their value and their worth, and they understood that I don't have to be like her, I don't have to be like him, because I need to be like me because this is what the world needs, then we could be so much farther in life. And I think it took me a long time to understand that it was okay to be me and not to try to be someone that I wasn't, or even if I didn't understand it, just to go with it because, as a creator, I have this gut instinct around things, and it is not weird, and it's okay to go with it, and that usually ends up being the right thing to do. Something I also tell myself is, you know, this is gonna be funny, but I sleep a lot. One,
Okay.
because I have narcolepsy, but that's a whole nother story.
Okay.
But a part of me sleeping is problem solving. I
Yeah.
have found so many solutions and answers to issues that I've had, or creative things that I was trying to decide or come up with, um, by dreaming. And
Hmm.
and this is both literal and, you can take it for what it's worth, but don't stop dreaming, both
Yeah.
physically and also just whatever you think you can do, whatever you want to do, dream it up and do it. A part of being a creative is a lot of people can't dream. Creatives are the people who can dream and then figure out how to get there. That's what makes us, creatives.
There is something, I don't know if this is true for you, but I imagine it is that there's something to be said that when you put your dreams and your goals out into the universe, it has this effect of gaining momentum and pushing you in that direction. It's like once it's out there, it's no longer just something, a secret desire in your heart or something like that. It's like you put yourself on a course. Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't necessarily agree with I well, I don't so I don't know necessarily ascribe to the universe, but
Well, I mean, like a self-fulfilling prophecy or something. Like there's something to be said that when you put that energy out there, it motivates you in a way to kind of aim towards that. I don't know. How would you phrase it?
so I would phrase it as, if something is put inside of you, then you run with it. Because
Okay.
and this is just from my perspective, um if if there's and I like to call it God, but a lot like you'll call it the universe, it's the same kind of, this little itch, desire, whatever it is, the same way. If you feel it, then go for it, because 9 times out of 10, it's there for a reason, and you might just be the person that needed to run with this specific thing in order for it to happen in the world.
Do you find yourself listening for like do you find yourself listening to, I guess, trying to listen to the voice of God, like trying to find that thing that's in
Always.
communication with you? Yeah.
Yeah. I believe that that voice is the thing that gives me the most creative ideas. I
Hmm.
think that God is, think about it, he created all of this. So the person who created, water, wind, soil, people, the universe. Sorry,
All
sorry.
good. All good.
The person who created all of this is the ultimate creator, and
Hmm.
I believe that if there is an idea that I haven't had, he's got a bajillion more waiting,
Yeah.
and so yeah, that's what I think.
So to ask you the flip side, because we talked about what are some of the difficulties, what brings you the most joy out of just do your work currently?
I think the thing that brings me the most joy, well, it's twofold. One is I have a very like strategic mind. So one is I love to see something from start to finish. So
Okay.
I love to be able to have an idea and take that idea from A, B, C, D, all the way to Z into its completion. Like that is the ultimate goal for me. And then obviously seeing how people react and love it or interact with it. But being able to take something from concept to completion is huge for me. But then also just people, how the work that we do impacts people, you just can't put a price tag on it. You think you're doing something small by just making a little video that goes viral or that impacts somebody and changes the trajectory of their life. And so
Mm.
you really can't put a price tag on that kind of impact.
It's kind of amazing. I guess it's something that I can relate to, but not on the same level. I think. Oh, I make T-shirts, so it's like if I see someone wearing the T-shirt, I'm as happy as can be. Is
Right.
there is there is there a certain element or a certain task you do at your job that you enjoy more than others?
Um, I think so. While I'm in the process, like when we make videos for that will show on Sunday, um, I love doing that, not necessarily because of the work that it takes to make the videos, but also because of the response that you'll see from
Mm,
people immediately, you know? So you'll know, well, A, whether they loved it, hated it, thought it was funny, thought it was inspiring, and you immediately have a pulse on, oh yeah, that worked. Oh, that was great. Oh, ooh, we might have should have rethought that idea. So I love that part of the video making, but then also similar to you too, with I design all of, our t-shirts and things. So I love when people love the design, or when people text me and say, "Oh my gosh, where can I buy some more of these, or are we going to sell these, or how can I get another one?" And that is awesome, as well.
yeah. Um, oh, excuse me.
You get-
Uh, going forward, um, is there a goal you have for yourself that you'd see in 2023?
So yeah, that actually is a great question. And I was actually telling, I don't remember who, so I think I'm going to tell my husband the other day. I was like, I want to learn another skill. So sometimes, when you get good at your job, and you kind of sometimes get a little comfortable. And
Yeah.
my goal is to never get comfortable, and to always be learning something new. And like I have a daughter who's 6 and a son who's 8, and she's really into um, guitar right now, and my son's into like anime and gaming. And sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna learn how to build a Roblox like game so that I can connect with him, or I'm gonna learn how to play the piano so that I can play alongside her. Just trying to always keep myself learning something so that I'm never left behind.
Hmm, that's cool. Um, Whitney, I I can't thank you enough for coming on today. It's been really great. And then I wanted to ask, before we wrap this up, do you have anything you'd like to plug? Anything that, whether event wise or a page or something like that, just something you want to bring attention to?
Well, yeah, I mean, always would love to anyone who's watching this, if you're in the Atlanta area, stop by and see us at Eagles Nest Church. On Sundays we're at 9 and 11 at Centennial High School. For now, in a few we'll be over in our new location, but we'd love for you to come check us out. And it's been great. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Whitney. Hey, say thanks to Jeremiah for the tech support this morning. And then I look forward to talking to you soon. Let me know what you need, and then we'll try and get it done.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
See you, Whitney.
All right,
Bye.
bye.